What's going on, YouTube? This is SG1 Sports, and you're watching our college football channel. It's time for my official 2023-24 college football playoff predictions. We are going to go through and show you the top 10, who's going to make it into the top 4, what the matchups will be, and then I'll go all the way to the national championship game and give you my pick for the team that's going to win it all this season. Of course, if you have been following the channel, you already know we've done every single Power 5 team videos for every single team, game-by-game predictions. I wrap that up with the conferences, the Power 5 conferences, and showing you who I think is going to win the conference championship. All of that. If you missed those videos, you can go back and check them out and get more information on, I guess, why I have who I have in where I have them. So let's get to it, and we'll start here. This was actually my way too early prediction. So all the way back in January, I had Georgia, Michigan, Notre Dame, and Penn State, and I'm not sure why. Well, I don't want to give too much away about my actual predictions, but again, I'm not really sure why this is what I had back in January, honestly. But obviously, so much goes into researching these teams. Things happen in the offseason, transfers, all of those things. So there's a lot that goes into it from January to August. And my opinion obviously changed about some of these teams. So let's start at number 10. I've got Washington at number 10. I had them going to the Pac-12 championship, losing. And I'm going to do a full top 25 video where I'm going to show you what I think the entire top 25 is going to look like at the end of the season. And you'll maybe understand why some of these teams are where they are. I did go by what I think the playoff committee would do as far as ranking these teams based off of my predictions, not necessarily who I think is the better team. What I think the playoff committee would do based off of the results that I have predicted. So Washington at number 10, Alabama and Clemson at 8 and 9. Alabama losing in the SEC championship, Clemson losing in the ACC championship. I do think Alabama and Clemson's resume is just a little bit better than Washington's. Those teams very close, but we know the committee does love Alabama. So I've got them at number 8. I think at number 7, I think I got my graphics backward there. But anyways, number 7, we've got Texas. So Texas going 11-2, winning the Big 12, but just missing out on the college football playoff. Could easily see them at 12-1, because again, if you remember my predictions, I did have them beating Alabama, but getting upset a couple times just because that's kind of what Texas has done. I think they're capable of honestly, I think they're capable of going 13-0, but definitely 12-1, and that would put them in the college football playoff. But again, I'm not going to jump the gun on Texas and say that they're back just yet. I want to see it for a full season, because we just have not seen that. They've been so inconsistent. So Texas at number 7. Number 6 is USC. I have them winning the Pac-12 championship, going 11-2. Another team that I could definitely see in that college football playoff. I could see them going 12-1. I don't think they run the table. I think the schedule is too tough for the Pac-12 this year. But again, could definitely see USC or Texas. And that's kind of where my thoughts are. These top 7 teams that you're going to see here, those are the teams that I strongly considered for the college football playoff to get into that top 4. So Alabama, Clemson, Washington, I don't really think those teams are going to get in. Sure, they have a chance. Sure, they're going to be really good. But the top 7 teams, I really feel like the playoff field is going to come out of these top 7 teams. So we go to number 5, Florida State, the first team out at 11-2, winning the ACC championship, but losing to Clemson on the road and then losing to LSU. You flip that LSU game around, this team's in the college football playoff. That's why I think that game is so important. We obviously haven't showed you LSU yet. Means LSU I do have in the playoff. If that game goes the other way, I think Florida State's in, LSU's out. So that is just a massive game to kick off the season, because based off of my predictions of what I think the winner of that game is going to be in the college football playoff, and I think the loser is going to be left out, because I don't think the loser of that game is going to run the table. So let's get into the top 4. I've got Georgia. We'll start at number 1 here, because you probably already know if you've watched my predictions. I've got Georgia at number 1, going undefeated, taking that top spot once again, and then Michigan at 2. I have them also going undefeated. When you really look at the resumes for these two teams, I think you can make an argument for Michigan actually to be number 1. I don't think the committee is going to do that. We're talking about the 2-time national champions in Georgia. I think Georgia probably a little more dominant than Michigan in their games. They will have a really good win over Tennessee. They'll have a really good win over Alabama in the SEC Championship. So I think those 2 wins will be enough. But Michigan will have wins over Ohio State, Penn State, Wisconsin in the Big Ten Championship. So you got three really good wins there. But I think Georgia still probably winds up at 1. So who comes in at number 3? A team that I don't even have winning their conference championship, LSU. I've got LSU going 11-1 in the regular season, losing only to Alabama on the road. But we have seen it before. 1-loss teams versus 2-loss conference champions. The committee has tended to go with those 1-loss teams that did not win their conference championship. And again, we're talking about an LSU team that their only loss would be to Alabama, a top 10 team on the road. They would have the win over Florida State. They have a win over Texas A&M, who I think I have around number 15. Again, I'll show you that top 25 in another video. A good win over Ole Miss. I mean, you look at their resume, it's going to be good enough to where, especially when you've got the head-to-head over Florida State, LSU, I think, is definitely in that scenario. And then at number 4, I've got Ohio State. Now, this one is a little bit more... it's a little bit tougher because you're comparing Ohio State and Florida State. Ohio State doesn't have a head-to-head win over Florida State. They've only got 1 loss, but Florida State's a conference champion. I think the non-conference game against Notre Dame, that's what gets Ohio State into the college football playoff over a 2-loss Florida State. They would have a win over Penn State, also a win over Wisconsin, who I've got going 10-2 in the regular season, so that's a really good win. And then that big non-conference win over Notre Dame, who I also have at 10-2. So you've got some really good wins there, a better resume than Florida State, even in my opinion, if you count that conference championship. And like I said, the committee has gone with the 1-loss team over the 2-loss conference champion in the past. This is the last year of the 14 playoff, of course. But I think Ohio State would get in. I think Florida State, USC, Texas would be left out. But if Florida State can beat LSU again, they would be in here. I guess you would have Ohio State at 3. Well, no, Florida State would be at 3 because they don't have 1 loss. And so, yeah, Florida State would just flip with LSU. Would have Florida State, Michigan, Georgia, Ohio State. So if Ohio State goes 11-1, I really think they're going to be in, unless you have another, like a Texas goes in, finishes a 1 loss and they win the Big 12. But Ohio State playing Notre Dame in the non-conference, and if Wisconsin's as good as I think they're going to be, they're going to have a really solid resume despite not winning the Big Ten. And again, their loss would come on the road to the number 2 team in Michigan. All right, so let's get to the games. We start with Georgia, Ohio State. Really good matchup here. Is Kyle McCord ready to go up against this Georgia defense? That'll be a big question here in this game. He'll have all season, obviously, to get prepared for this game. You got to go back to the game last year. I feel like Ohio State really outplayed Georgia for the most part. So what does that mean this year? Well, and back to the quarterbacks, you're also looking at Carson Beck of Georgia, another young quarterback or an inexperienced quarterback. So you have 2 inexperienced quarterbacks here, but I don't think Ohio State's defense is going to be quite as scary as Georgia's. But again, you go back to last year, you could say, wow, Ohio State, they lost a heartbreaker, missed field goal, should have won the game, outplayed them most of the game. They'll be really fired up. They'll be really motivated. But you could also turn that around and say that Kirby Smart's going to have Georgia really motivated. He's going to tell them, look, they outplayed us last year. We got lucky. And he's going to play the underdog role because they somehow played the underdog card last year against TCU. No idea how he pulled that off. But yeah, I think Georgia will be really, really fired up for this game. So will Ohio State. It's going to be a great clash. I think it'll come down to the wire just like last year's game. But I've got to go with the 2-time defending champs, their pedigree. They find a way to get it done. I'm going with Georgia to beat Ohio State again. But that one is a tough call. I really think Ohio State would have a chance in that game. And really, I just kind of talked about the psychological factors. Didn't really talk about the X's and O's. It really, I think, it's the Georgia defense. They're going to be really, really good once again. And I don't think Ohio State's defense is going to be as good. And I think that's really going to be the difference in this game. Georgia's defense makes some plays that Ohio State's defense does not. And that's why they win the game. Then you got Michigan and LSU. This will be another great matchup here. You've got LSU with so much talent, especially on offense. You got Michigan and their physicality, what they do at the line of scrimmage and running the football. Psychological factor here. Michigan probably going to be favored by just a little bit. And so LSU, I guess, could say that they're the underdogs here, but I don't think there's really a ton of that going into this game. I think it's really going to come down to just the better team, and I do think that Michigan is the better overall team if J.J. McCarthy plays well. I think he comes back after a terrible performance last year in the playoff, and I think he does play well. I think J.J. McCarthy is the difference with all that, with that great running game and that defense for Michigan. But J.J. makes some plays. That's another great game. I think the semifinals this year are both going to be really, really good games, really close games. I can't wait to see what happens. And remember, last year's semifinals were really good as well. So Georgia-Michigan National Championship. This is going to be a good one. This is going to be a great game. You look at Georgia and their defense. You look at Michigan and their run game. Can Michigan run the football against this Georgia defense? I don't know that they can, and I think that ultimately could be why they lose this game. But I'm going to come back to something I said just a minute ago. J.J. McCarthy. That's going to be the difference in this game, depending on how he plays, and can he run the ball some? Dual threat quarterbacks. That's what gives this Georgia defense fits. Look at what C.J. Stroud did last year. Not really known as a runner, but he played his guts out and was able to run and make some plays against Georgia. I think J.J. McCarthy has to do that for Michigan to have a chance. Michigan's also, though, going to have a really good defense, and I think their defense will play great in this game. Look, the last 2 years we've doubted Michigan. A couple of years ago, it was things are falling apart. Michigan is headed downhill. Jim Harbaugh is going to the NFL. It seemed like everybody was doubting them. They come back. They upset Ohio State. They go to the college football playoff. Then you go back to last year. Everyone's saying there's no way they're going to go into Columbus and beat Ohio State. Ohio State's a team that's going to come out of the Big Ten. Michigan proved them wrong. Well, this year, I don't think anybody's saying that. I think most people are picking Michigan to win the Big Ten, or at least giving them a great shot. But where are they doubting them? They're doubting them on this right here, the national championship. And I think Jim Harbaugh and the Michigan Wolverines prove everyone wrong. They win the national championship. It is so tough to repeat. It is so even tougher to do it 3 times in a row. I just don't think Georgia's going to be able to pull it off. And I think this is Michigan's year. I think they go out and they win the final 4-team college football playoff. And I said this to someone the other day. The SEC has had that great run, and it came to an end in the very last BCS championship. The SEC now on another great run. I think it comes to an end here in the final 4-team playoff as we start a new 12-team playoff era next season. So that's my pick. I'm sticking with it. Michigan over Georgia. Can't wait to watch these teams and really evaluate them. And as we get into the season, we'll see if my prediction stays the same. But preseason, I'm going Michigan. I just think it's their year. Fate is on their side. I would love to get your picks, though. Your 4 playoff teams and who you think is going to win the national championship. Make sure you comment and give me your predictions. And who knows, maybe we'll come back and look at those at the end of the season. Thanks for watching, and stay tuned for more right here on the SG1 Sports College Football Channel.